Hi, I'm Dr. Divina Lopez, a board-certified pediatrician with over 10 years of experience in pediatrics, and you are listening to Dancing into Parenthood. Hello, welcome back to Dancing into Parenthood. Today I have the lovely Shontaye Glover, and she is a speech pathologist. I'm so happy to have her on the show today because, for example, I'm going to learn what is the difference between a speech pathologist and a speech therapist today. So I'm very excited to hear all about how she can help you as a new parent and help with your baby's speech development. So let me give you a little bit of background on Shontaye. She is a proud alumni of Morgan State University in Baltimore, Maryland, and she received her Master's of Science degree in Communication Disorders from William Patterson University in her home state of New Jersey, where she's practicing. She is certified and licensed to practice in New Jersey and in New York. And her career as a speech therapist began in the hospital setting, working with adults and children experiencing communication and swallowing feeding challenges. Since that time, she became a wife and a mother to two beautiful daughters and transitioned into the public school and private practice settings. Her experience includes assessment and treatment of children and adults with developmental delays, autism spectrum disorders, traumatic brain injury, cerebral palsy, cognitive deficits, neurological impairments, genetic syndromes, auditory impairments, social communication disorders, as well as motor speech disorders. She believes that learning should be fun and that play is a child's work. I agree with you 100% on that. It is her responsibility to reach the child and meet them where they are. If a child is not grasping a new skill, she is committed to changing her approach until they understand. And I love that. That is so important because then you make them feel comfortable and you let them know there's everybody learns in a different way. So, sometimes we just have to figure that out. She's passionate about developing strong foundations at an early age to help children develop lifelong skills. And that includes, but is not limited to, communication skills, play skills, and self-help skills. She believes children perform best when they feel safe and encouraged. Her clients always know that she cares and that she has their best interest at heart. She thrives to bring a nurturing and caring disposition to every child that she encounters, and she's grateful to every parent who entrusts their child to her care. And in her free time, she loves running, reading, listening to music, spending time with her family, and getting away to the beach, which is my favorite place in the world too. So I can totally relate.
Love the beach.
Yeah, so actually I was introduced to Shontaye through Bergen in Color, through Instagram. And so I'm always really grateful to them because they've been amazing about featuring my events. And through Bergen in Color, I've met so many wonderful people. And really, we're all pretty much in the same area, Northern New Jersey. And so it's a great resource to have, a great friend, I guess, to connect really good people. So I'm very grateful to them for introducing you to me, and I'm so grateful that you said yes as soon as I asked you to do this podcast. That was very gracious of you. So I let's get right into just what is the difference between a speech pathologist and a speech therapist, because I need to know the difference too.
Okay, great. Well, first, let me just say thank you for having me, and thank you to Bergen in Color. I'm glad that she connected us.
Yes.
Basically, a speech therapist, people don't know what we do, but we really try to help children and adults who have difficulty communicating. So that could be that you have trouble finding the words to express yourself. It could be a child that's not speaking at all yet. either because they're a late talker or maybe there's something else going on, like some sort of a
Right.
disorder.
Right.
We work in different settings. So sometimes we see people who have had a stroke.
Right.
But for the most part right now, I work mostly with children. So I'm helping children to communicate, whether it's verbally, non-verbally, and learning those skills so that they can become a competent communicator.
Right. Okay, cool. So for the parents out there, because I know that every parent is desperate to hear their baby talk.
Yes.
I mean, sometimes I'm like, okay, you guys are expecting a lot so soon. Uh, when should they really start to have some speech development? They really just notice the first signs of their baby expressing themselves in some way.
So one of the biggest questions and most common concerns that I get from parents is that they're worried their children's not saying enough words.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, the language development starts right from the very beginning. From
Mm-hmm.
those very first weeks, you're going to be
Mm-hmm.
try to look at your child as much as possible. When
Right.
they look back at you and they're smiling at you, that's
Yes.
communication. Those are the beginning
Right.
steps of communication.
The
Um,
interaction.
Absolutely. You want to
Yeah.
hear them starting to make a lot of noises with their mouths, even though you don't know what they're saying. You want to hear
Mm-hmm.
sounds coming out. But I would say about 6 months of age, you want to start hearing some of that babbling, like a lot of ba ba ba, ma ma ma, da
Yes.
da da. That's
Yes.
important around the 6 to 9 month stage.
Mm-hmm.
Usually after 9 months, you might start hearing mama and dada, or switching it up, like switching the sounds like ma and ga. But by the first birthday, that's when we're looking for a real word. And when I say a real word, not mama or dada, but maybe like ball or cup or
Right.
juice, that's when
Right.
you want those real words to come in. But from the very beginning, our jobs, I know we're super busy as moms, we have so much going on.
Yes.
I just try to talk to them as much as you can, make a lot of eye contact, and just keep them stimulated through that way.
Right. I think, one of my favorite like milestones is when babies start cooing,
I love
and when they start like imitating, and they have that like back and forth
Yes,
kind of conversation. There's no real conversation, but that they're trying to
they're
engage you.
trying.
And so like that for me is always like, if I see the baby doing that when they come in for their physicals and I'm assessing for the developmental milestones, I always engage with them so that I can see, okay, this baby, and some babies are like amazing at this. They just capture your attention immediately because they want to have some sort of interaction with you. And you have to, I think, as a parent, like be super present with them all the time
Yes,
because they're
absolutely.
listening to you all the time, right?
Constantly.
So,
They're listening to the sound of your voice and they're
right.
responding to it. You'll start to notice that they turn their heads towards your voice and
Yes.
turn towards a sound or a noise that they hear. So
Right.
it's super important to be present and try to make as much eye contact as you can, because you're
Yeah.
looking at your mouth too to see
Right.
what you're doing.
How do
And
you
then they
make
start to
those?
copy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then they start copying that too. So it's very important.
Yeah,
You hit
yeah,
it.
it's
Yep. Be
adorable. It's
present.
really one of my favorite milestones. I
Mhm.
mean, for me, it's just, I'll never get tired of that one.
No,
Never,
I think for
ever.
me too, as a mom, that was my
Yeah.
favorite stage, and I always
Yes.
tell people to record as much as possible because you're gonna
Mm-hmm.
miss those sounds. You're gonna miss those coos and those oohs and
Yes.
those ahs and the babbling. Once they
Right.
start saying words, you're gonna miss those sweet, innocent sounds.
Right. So for me as a pediatrician, if I notice that the baby is not having those cooing noises or not interacting in that way, I always make sure that the baby had a hearing test when the baby was born,
Hmm.
and that we know that the baby passed or failed, and if not, then we need to go ahead and have a follow-up. And I usually ask about the family history, whether there's any hearing loss on either side, because that's always the first thing that we check as pediatricians before we go ahead and like make a referral.
Hmm.
So we always have to make sure that the baby can hear
Yeah.
before expecting, some good speech from them.
Another thing,
Mhm.
speaking of hearing, I always
Yes.
ask too if the child has had a lot of ear infections, whether the fluid was
Yes.
infected or just present, that also affects the way that they hear speech and language. So that's important to know too. You definitely want to talk to your pediatrician, and if necessary, an audiologist, and get a more specific test done just to make sure they're hearing things the way that they should.
That's right. Yeah, because that fluid behind the eardrum can really affect the hearing, and so that can definitely be a big problem. Thank you for adding that. That's really important. Yes. All right. So, what can parents do to support their baby's speech development?
Well, like I said before, and like you pointed out, you definitely want to be present and you want to talk to them. Talk. You can't talk to them enough. And try to make them use their words. So I would say probably around the 12-month stage, when you start to hear some words, you want to try to put more demands on them so they get the connection between their words and getting what they want. So if your baby tends to put their arms up a lot and then you just pick them up, now start saying the word up and get them to say up too, so that they're actually using their words to get what they want. And then they make that the connection between communication and unlocking their world. So parents, what you can do is just try to use words as much as possible, and then try to get your child to start using words. I always tell parents, like, for a 1-year-old, you should consistently be using at least one word. 2 years of age, you should be consistently using at least 2 words, combining 2-word phrases.
Combining them, right.
Mommy up, where daddy, baby go. And then by 3 years of age, you should be consistently using 3-word sentences. And when I say that, that's the minimum. There's definitely going to be children who are doing a lot more talking than that. But that's what you should be looking for. So if you have a 1-year-old, you do want them to try to start using those single words to tell you juice, cup, bottle, whatever it is they want. You want to put those demands on them so that they start using their words more and more.
One of the tips that I give the parents is, start reading from day one. Even if it seems silly, go ahead and just open a book, get one of those little fun baby books. Maybe it just has like one word on each page, but at least, they're starting to really hear the words, because I think they even listen to like the inflection of the sounds, right? Absolutely. So, I tell parents, even if you think it's kind of silly because you're thinking, what is the baby really getting out of this? They're getting a lot out of it. And I've noticed, like, the kids that are read to more, they're very precocious with their speech. They're like, sometimes I'm amazed by them at how quickly they pick up the language, and, I'm like, go for it. Just, get a good book. And then, you're also teaching them that reading is really fun, and it may be, one of their most fun times with the parent, actually. Maybe, that's a good way to interact with the baby too.
That's an excellent tip. I agree with you. Start reading as soon as possible. And I tell parents too, don't feel like you're stuck reading the entire book or every word on the page. Yes. If you feel like it's too much, just talk about what you see on the pages and point out the objects, because books can be a really good way to help your children build their vocabulary too. Yeah. And like you said, they're listening to the words, they're listening to the inflection in your voice, they're looking at your face for any animation. So it's just a really nice bonding process between the parents and the child. So if you can read at least one book a day with your baby, you're setting them up for a great future.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And there's so many ways to get good books which are not expensive. I like to go to there's like these consignment shops where you can go ahead and you can get books for like 25 cents, 50 cents. So there are so many ways to really get affordable books, because I know sometimes going to like Barnes and Nobles and stuff can be a little expensive. But if you want to go ahead and just go to a consignment shop, and I feel like there's so many popping up all over the place, or if you even have friends that you can borrow something, or trade things off.
Your local library is a good resource too. They have baby books that you can borrow. Sometimes they have books that are for free that they'll give away. And I found a lot of really good books at stores in the checkout line, like Marshalls and TJ Maxx. They often sell books at a discounted rate too.
Yeah, that's a good tip. That's true. I forgot about that one, but that is really true.
And they have good baby books.
Yeah, those are important. Okay, so one of my pet peeves, and my parents know this, is the bottle. Sometimes people are really dependent on that bottle and they just love giving their babies the bottle. I mean, there's so many reasons why I'm so on top of like, let's get that bottle, let's wean it. Let's wean the bottle because I mean for dentition and for other reasons, but I know for speech, it's also so important because sometimes I see these kids with the bottles in their mouths all day long. Like, let's try to transition over to the sippy.
Yes, we need that message to get out there to move away from the bottles as soon as possible because it really does impact your speech. But also, if you have a bottle in your mouth all day, you can't talk because your mouth is occupied.
Correct. Right.
So one thing that I also tell parents, when you move from the bottle to a cup, try not to use those little sippy cups because the sippy cup spout is so similar to a nipple. It has the same effect on your child's oral muscles and their speech production. So try to go to a cup with a straw or an open cup. I know it's messy. I've been there as a mom. I know you don't want that added mess to clean up from trying out a new cup. Yeah. But if you don't want to do the open cup, do a straw. But it's just better for them, for their muscles to mature and better for their speech in the future.
Right. And they also have those cups with the lids now that are like a non-spill lid, but it's a cup. And so they're learning to bring it up to their mouth. And just like you said, you know, the oral motor, you know, the muscles just develop better when you're drinking from the straw versus, and yeah, you're right, the sippy, because, and I tell parents this, like, have you ever tried drinking from a sippy? It's really hard even to suck the fluid out. So you want that motion of, you know, bringing up through the straw where you're actually like pursing the lips versus having to just like do this other suck where you're putting the tongue under and, you know, in order to enhance the speech development.
That's exactly it. With the position that your tongue is in with a sippy cup is the same position as if you were using a pacifier or a bottle. And later on, that's what tends to be an issue when you hear children whose speech sounds distorted. It's because they have the incorrect tongue position, and then we have to correct that. But if early on, while their muscles are still developing, we can get them to have better positions and better actions with using an open cup or straw, then we see a lot more improvement.
And luckily there's so many, I mean, there's so many available now where they have like the weighted straw on the bottom, so it's still getting the liquid that's at the bottom of the bottle. Or whatever that is. I don't know what, like to say the cup maybe. But they do have so many available. I've seen plenty of brands now. So I don't think it's hard to even find one at this point.
No, I think you're right. I think there are lots of options out there now. Just have to shop around and find what works for you. But try not to use a sippy cup with the spout and try to get away from the bottle as soon as possible.
Right. And really, I think, you know, parents have to realize how much better life is once you get rid of the bottle. Like if you can wean the baby off of it early, it makes your life easier too, because you're not having to clean those bottles anymore. And carry them all over with you. You know, sometimes, you know, it's a little harder with the milk. So parents will tell me, you know, oh, but to drink the milk at night, they still need that. And I'm like, okay, fine. But then when it comes to the water during the day, let's try to start transitioning at least with the water, and eventually we can get to the milk bottle also.
Absolutely.
Yes, like I said, it's really a pet peeve for me when I see like a 2-year-old coming in drinking out of I'm like, absolutely not.
No, I agree.
Start doing this at 1 year old. Like, let's start transitioning. Or even before that. I did it with my son even before that because I didn't like cleaning bottles. I thought they were No,
I agree with you. I think I started before 1 too. I think probably around 9 months I started introducing a cup because I was over the bottles and over cleaning all those nipples.
Yeah, it's gross. It takes too much time, and I get grossed out by them.
Yeah.
So one of the major questions that I get from parents, because I do serve like a bilingual community, is whether growing up in a bilingual home contributes to having a speech delay.
So that's a huge myth. I've heard that a lot, and actually there are some professionals who will say yes, it does. But the fact of the matter is,
annoyed.
Not true.
I get annoyed when they come back to me and they're like, you told me it doesn't, but that person told me it didn't. I'm like, no, it doesn't.
It doesn't. It doesn't. Our brains are just wired the way that they're wired, and some children can learn languages simultaneously, and some children need more time.
Right.
And I would never ever tell someone to stop using their native language and only use English either. I think that there's too many cultural implications, and you don't want to isolate your child.
Right.
So what you should do instead is just seek out assistance if you feel like your child has a delay, but don't feel like you can't introduce them to multiple languages, and don't feel like because you did that's what caused them to have a delay, because that's totally not true.
Right. They're like sponges. So sometimes they do confuse like one language with the other. So they'll start speaking a sentence in one language and then maybe one word might be in another language. But I tell them it doesn't matter. They'll figure it out. They're like little sponges. So just go ahead and, they can learn 3 languages at a time. Just go ahead and do it. It's totally fine, and it's going to be easier, and they'll have a better accent. Because you did it when they were younger. Because honestly, my parents both spoke Spanish, but they were afraid to speak to me in Spanish because they didn't want me to have issues when I started school. And I had to learn Spanish as an adult.
Oh, wow.
So I sound like the gringa, speaking.
You sound like me when I try to speak Spanish.
Believe me, it's probably we're probably at the same level. But it's gotten much better, because within like the past 2 years, I've been forcing myself, like, you need to learn this. And through music, I really learned, because I'm a big music person. I'm a dancer. And so when I really got into salsa, I wanted to know what these songs were saying. So I finally got into it. But, I tell my parents all the time, like, why didn't you just teach me? And their excuse was, the whole like school thing. And then they say, oh, you didn't want to learn at some point. So, the sooner, the better.
I agree. Makes it easier. Introduce it to them right away. They're as babies, they can learn it. Their brains are wired. We're all wired that way. But sometimes it just takes more time, or you might find that they understand both but don't use both. But continue to introduce them. Continue to expose them to languages. I wish I knew more as a child too.
Yeah,
it's so much easier to learn as a child than as an adult.
Yes, it's just so much easier, and they really pick it up. They pick it up so easily when they're young.
Definitely.
And what are some of the red flags that babies present with if they're having an issue with their speech development?
So like I alluded to earlier, I think if you have a child that's past their first birthday and still not saying any words, that should be a concern to you. Between 12 to 15 months old, on average, kids have at least 50 words. Some have way more than that. But if your child's still not saying any real words, if they're still just babbling with mama and dada, that's a red flag. That's a reason for concern, where you should probably seek out some help, either through early intervention or through your insurance company. Talk to your pediatrician. But that's something to look at. And then as they get older, you want them to continue to have vocabularies that grow constantly. So every week, it should seem like your child is learning and understanding new words and using new words. And just use the guide that I gave you earlier. At 1, they're consistently using single words. So that means that they're no longer pointing all of the time and gesturing and taking you by the hand for what they want. They're actually trying to use words to tell you. And the words don't have to be clear. And it could be like a short and abbreviated version of banana. They say nana instead of banana. That's okay, but they're still trying to use a word for banana every time.
Right.
And at 2, you want them to be combining words. And at 3, you want those, we call them utterances in speech, but you want those little phrases to get longer and longer and start to seem like real sentences. But if you feel like their language isn't growing, don't wait. Unfortunately, so many parents wait, and they take the wait and see approach, thinking they'll grow out of it. But the sooner you just contact someone and ask the questions, the earlier the intervention you get, the better progress they'll have.
Right. And when they go to their pediatricians for their physicals, the pediatrician should be giving them is what we call an MChat to fill out so that they can assess whether the baby is reaching their milestones in all aspects in speech and physical development. And so the parents, if they notice maybe they went for physical and they didn't receive it, maybe they should, bring it up to the pediatrician. I always encourage parents to advocate for their children. Do it early on, because the sooner the better when we catch these things.
Sure.
And it's really, luckily for us, like living in New Jersey or New York, you have so many services available. So you should definitely use these resources. That way they can get into the home and, get it started if it's needed, because I feel like so many kids, once it started, they just like take off.
Absolutely.
After that. And it's amazing. And the parents that are like, I wish I did this sooner.
Yeah.
So, don't be afraid. It doesn't mean something's wrong with your child. It's just, something that we should get the help for really early on, because it probably will resolve after, some kids after a few sessions, they're just taking off. And I'm like, look at that,
Totally. Absolutely.
It really doesn't take too long.
I just want to reiterate what you said. It doesn't mean that they have a lifelong problem. It just means that they're having a little difficulty right now. And I think that parents should look at it the way that you would look at any other physical ailment. You wouldn't tell your child that we're going to wait and see if they had a broken leg. You would take them to get the help immediately.
Right.
And you should do the same thing if you notice any kind of delay in their speech or language development, or any development for that matter. And like you said, once you start treatment, it's amazing to see how quickly they start speaking, they start understanding more. They just need a little bit of a push, just a little bit of intervention to help them along the process.
Yeah.
Don't let your anxiety or your fear keep you from asking those questions. You might find out that you have an evaluation and they say, you know what, he's okay. He just needs a little bit of help here, or they'll give you some tips of things you could do at home, and he doesn't necessarily need therapy. You never know, but have the evaluation. Talk to someone just so you can find out, am I in the right direction? Is everything okay? Or is there something else going on that I need to evaluate?
That's right. Yeah. I do like that on your website you had the chart for the developmental milestones. I thought that was a good idea, and it's always a good reference for parents. Her website is havingourSay.org, and one of the rules that I always go by when it comes to how clear the speech is, because parents are usually concerned about, oh well, I'm the only person who understands, or something like that. The rule that we use as pediatricians is that 50% of people will understand your baby's speech by 2 years old. At 3 years old, 75% of people should understand the speech, and then by 4 years old they should have more clear speech.
Yes.
There are, some children that do like stutter for a little while. There are some children that have issues sometimes with the enunciation of certain words, and those things usually are acceptable until a certain age. But again, I do try to make my referrals early on if I'm concerned about a child, and just encourage the parents to get the evaluation done, so that they're not regretting it later on.
Yeah, totally. I agree. We've talked a lot about language, but you're right with speech. And speech is more so about the way that you produce your sounds and how clear you sound. And there are milestones for speech as well. When you have your little baby, we're focusing mostly on just getting them to talk. But then once they start talking, then we start to take a look at how they're talking and how well they're being understood by other people. But if you feel like you and your immediate family are the only people who understand your child, then you should for sure talk to your pediatrician, because by the age of 4, people who aren't familiar with your child should still be able to understand most of what they say. So those are some milestones for that as well.
Right. So thank you, Shontaye, for doing this with me. And I know that you work at the school and you also do at-home visits. So I want everyone to know where they can connect with you. Where can they find you if they wanted, to have an evaluation with you or have you come into their home? How do they get in touch with you?
Sure. So you can reach me at my website, www.havingoursay.org. That's HAVINGOURSAY. I'm also on Instagram. I try to post a lot of information for parents. So my Instagram and my Facebook pages are really geared towards parents. I just feel like
Mm-hmm.
there's a gap between the information that professionals have and parents are receiving. So you can check that as well to get some information, but you could always reach me through any of my social media or my website if you have any questions, and contact me by phone or email if you'd like to set up an evaluation or a therapy session.
Wonderful. Thank you for taking out the time to do this with me. This is really special to me. And I know that the parents will really benefit so much from everything, all the information that you had to share with them today. So I really am honored that you did this with me. And I know they're going to just find so much information that they can use with their own children. And if they have any concerns, they also know they can reach out to me. So thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
No problem. And I hope maybe we can do more in the future because I know you have a wealth of information.
Sure.
Right,
I'd
to
be
share with
happy to come
everyone.
back again.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. And we're going to end it right there. So everyone knows they can reach me at drdivinalopez.com and find me on Instagram at Dr. Divina Lopez. Thank you.
To listen to more podcasts, please visit us at drdivinalopez.com and follow us on Instagram at Dr. Divina Lopez. Thank you for listening. Please keep in mind that all advice given in this podcast is general information. To understand your specific situation, you must consult with your pediatrician.